My very, very close friends have attention deficit, and Lindsay's going to speak about this. I'll be very interested to hear her take on it and as it relates to van life. So put your hands together, make her feel very welcome. Lindsay.
Thank you very much. So I must admit that I thought I was coming to talk about the bus conversion, just purely the bus conversion. So it was as much as a surprise to me as everybody else when I saw in the programme it said ADHD. But the great thing is I tend to wing everything in life, so I'm just going to see what comes out. Yeah, I'm going to talk about the bus, I'm going to talk about how ADHD comes into it as well. And then there'll be time for questions at the end. So if you've specifically come to hear me talk about something and I've not covered it, you can ask the question and hopefully get the answer that you're after. So people always talk about how does ADHD relate to the bus conversion, but I think had I not have been ADHD type brain, I perhaps never would have gone for it in the first place. So there's this element to ADHD of having these big dreams and big expectations and sometimes biting off more than you can chew. But then for me personally, that's always worked out because I go for it and I put my trust and my faith that it's going to work out one way or the other. And luckily for me, that's been paying off. So I'll just kind of tell you the story about the bus idea and where that came from and then bring some ADHD stuff into it. But growing up, I always wanted to live in a double-decker bus. I was fascinated by them. I think it was the idea that there's a staircase on a moving vehicle. And I just had it in my head, I'm going to buy a bus and I'm going to live in it. And then in my 20s, I did a little bit of research around the idea of having a cafe on a bus. And I kind of fell in and out of love with this idea. And then I got to my 30s. And I'm looking around and a lot of my friends are settling down, they're having kids, they're getting married, and I'm thinking, yeah, this isn't what I want to do, but I also want to provide myself with a focus. So I think that was where this motivation this time around came through, where I thought, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get a bus. I'm not sure how it's going to work, but I'm going to put my aim into making that happen. And then that year, my brother came to me and said, Lindsay, I want to sell the house. Was anybody here last year, by the way? Did anybody see me talk last year? So I might be repeating myself. So my brother came to me and said, I want to sell the house. And he thought that I was going to be really disappointed. He wanted to move in with his fiance. But for me, that was the first stage of maybe this dream can come true, because we're going to release a little bit of equity that we've built up in this house. And it wasn't enough for me to then move forward and buy my own place. So a lot of people say, oh, why did you get off the property ladder to then buy a bus? It's such a big risk. Thank you. But for me, it was like, well, staying on the property ladder wasn't really an option, or at least it's not an option that I wanted to explore. So in 2023, I decided to give up drinking alcohol and see what happened with that, because I'd heard it was really, really good for the ADHD brain. And at this point, I'm still on the waiting list for a diagnosis. My lovely podcast partner here, Steph, she has got the diagnosis. So we kind of represent a diagnosed and an undiagnosed presentation. Plus, I'm hyperactive and Steph's inattentive, although we're both combined. And so 2023, I gave up drinking because I wanted to see if that would help me manage my symptoms. And then everything seemed to fall in place that year. I ended up buying the bus in August of 2023 and converting it through 2024. And I never went back to drinking either, because what I found was when I stopped the alcohol, my voices and the chaos and everything seemed to calm down slightly. So if anybody has ever seen those, when people say, oh, give up booze for a year and see what the experiment's like and stuff like that, I can vouch that it does actually change a lot about your mindset, your mental health. I was a massive binge drinker and party girl before that, so I was as surprised as anybody else when I gave up drinking and actually quite enjoyed it. Like, it was as a shock to me as it was to everybody else. So I do credit coming off of the booze with straightening myself out a little bit and then being able to commit to this conversion, because it was such a massive task, which again is where the ADHD comes in, because in my mind, I want a bus, I'm going to convert it. I've not really thought about all the details in between. I'm quite impulsive, so if I've got my mind on something, even when people were saying it's a massive project, why don't you get a smaller van? You know, in my head, it's like I'd rather go for it and fail and have tried than not go for it at all. So yeah, I got the bus. I was a little bit overwhelmed for the first few months, and I spent a lot of time just sitting in the bus and kind of soaking it all in and thinking, where on earth do I start? I'd not even got a toolbox. I'd got no DIY experience whatsoever, but I had got a lot of faith in myself and a lot of experience that I can turn my hand to anything that I decide to. So I think that self-belief is what kind of carried me through. And yeah, so I started really converting it at the start of 2024 with the help of my mum. I wish she could have been here, because I feel like she deserves so much of the credit when it comes to this build, because as I said, I'm very kind of like big ideas and this is what I want to do, and I don't really think about how I'm going to do it, whereas my mum, bless her, was at home doing the research and, you know, you said that you might want to do this, well, I've looked up these ideas, these are the ways that you could do it. So we actually made a really, really good team. Without me having the big ideas, she would never have dared step out of her comfort zone, but without her being able to kind of manage those smaller details and do a bit of research for me, I perhaps never would have been able to have completed any of the jobs, and perhaps would have still been with a half converted bus even now. So last year when I came to do this talk, the bus was so not close to being finished whatsoever, and I was a little bit nervous about talking about it because I felt a bit like a fraud. You know, I've got this half completed bus, people might not even believe me that I've got any intention of finishing it. But did anybody see the big pale blue / white double decker in the arena yesterday? Brilliant. So, you know, there it is. It started off as an idea in my mind, and the reality has created itself. So part of the project with the bus is that I want it to be this beacon of hope for people that have got a dream that they might have been told is ridiculous, or they're not quite sure how they're going to get started. And I want the bus to kind of represent that we can achieve anything that we want to achieve, but it's got to come from that heart place first, and you've got to have that self-belief. And then the support network around you, because, you know, I've had friends and family there's been times where I'm thinking, why have I started this? And they're the ones that have kind of egged me on to keep going. And I'm so glad that I have now. So in 2024, I spent the whole time converting it in my spare time. I work as a specialist teacher, which is where the ADHD connection comes in. So I've been doing that for 15 years. When I first started working with young people that were ADHD, autistic, dyslexic, dyspraxic, all these wonderful labels, I was just thinking, I must have had these things when I was younger, and that's why they relate to me and why I get on with them. And even then, so even 15 years ago, there wasn't the kind of talk there is now about that you can be an adult with ADHD or female and autistic, you know, believe it or not. So it was through my line of work that I started realising this ADHD label still relates to me now, and kind of answers some of the questions, like why have I never really got on in a regular mainstream job? Why have I always been made to feel like a problem? Why have I never been able to hold down a romantic relationship? You know, there's certain things through my life that had been dragging these big baggage, shame, you know, it must be me, it must be my issues. So finding out that there was like reasons and starting to research about it gave me a lot of support and made me realise it was okay. And that was then why I then set up the platform, A Different Human Design. I'll just say it on my skirt. We were going to put the big sign up, but it's just far too windy. But I've got some stickers with QR codes on that will take you to our website. And the A Different Human Design platform, so it stands for ADHD, A Different Human Design. And the point of it was to show that it's not just negatives. So don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's probably people in the audience that either are ADHD or suspect they are, and that's why you've come along to listen. And I'm not going to stand here and say it is a superpower, because it's different for everybody for a start. It can depend on the kind of upbringing that you've had alongside being ADHD as to how it's impacting your life. But there is very much through the NHS and the mainstream media this kind of negative stigma surrounding it, and the point of the ADHD platform was to provide a broader picture that you might struggle with these things, and these things you might need a bit of focus on, but actually there's other things that you will find that you do really well and better than the mainstream expectation. So that was the point of the platform, and we created these comic book themed information booklets that are just more interesting to look at, because that's the other thing. I'm working with these young people and they're walking into my classroom and saying, yeah, doctor says I've got ADHD, so I can't read. And it's like, well, you might struggle to learn to read in the traditional format that we're doing in schools, but the word can't, you know, it's like you're already setting yourself up to fail. So the bus project, having the books and the library, is very much intertwined with my experience as a teacher and the fact that these young people have kind of lost their self-belief and they're a bit misdirected in terms of their own skills and being able to develop those. So that was part of the project, but then also being able to talk about ADHD and mental health and hopefully give people a bit of encouragement and a feeling that it doesn't have to define your life and there are ways to incorporate it. So some of the things in terms of like doing the buzz project and being ADHD is I'd be just sitting around and I think, oh, that needs painting, and then 2 seconds later I'm up and I'm painting it. I've got no PPE on, my hands are covered in like black spray paint that won't come off for 3 days. And or the other thing as well, like starting painting and not prepping the surfaces first. So it's like I'd look around and I'd have taken a set of drawers apart and I'm painting them purple and I'm surrounded by purple bits, and then I'm like climbing over it like, oh God. But it's a strange one, because if I didn't just do the things when my brain decides it's time to do it, then these things wouldn't get done either. So I think it is very much leaning into your strengths and leaning into your way of working. There is definitely this kind of feeling that this is the way things should be done, and if you don't do them that way, then there's something wrong with you. And I don't like that. I think that the beauty of being human is that there's this really broad diversity, and that we should cherish that. That's what makes us unique and special and fantastic, that everybody does things in a different way. And that's why the platform is A Different Human Design. Our podcast is A Different Podcast. And then the buzz is Buzz Different. Because I just think the word different kind of gives you that that kind of, you can explore that we're all on a spectrum. It's just understanding where you personally fit on that spectrum and how you can then manage your needs and your life to support yourself. So, I mean, I don't know a lot about when it comes to ADHD medication, because I'm not medicated, but as I mentioned, I did stop drinking and that transformed my life. And then the stopping the drinking gave me this mindset that maybe I could stop smoking as well, because I was, you know, addicted to nicotine too. And then I went on to give up nicotine, and that's definitely changed the way that my brain operates. But Steph, you're medicated ADHD, so when we do our podcast, we've got this kind of real broad spectrum between us of experiences. So well, make sure that I give out the stickers for you guys so that you can go onto our YouTube channel, and there's loads of episodes already on there covering all sorts of different topics and how it might relate. So there's a whole wealth of information. And the idea is now to keep going around festivals and meeting people and having those conversations. One thing that we found last year was the same story coming up. A lot of people come along and they say, oh, my child or my grandchild was diagnosed. And then we started looking into what that means for them. And then I started to realise it relates to me, or it relates to Uncle Billy. And the thing is, it tends to be genetic. There tends to be this, like, I can look at my dad's side of the family and my mum's side of the family, and I'm like, I did not stand a chance. My dad's side of the family are totally wild, especially the women. It seems to be like the female side of things that really carry that gene. And then my mum's side of the family, my granddad's got a model railway in his attic that's the perfect replica of the Great Central Railway, which is in the Midlands, and he scaled it all down to size. I mean, I respect his way of working so much because it's so opposite to me. He is very particular and very detailed, and my brother got all those genes, and I'm just kind of like slapdash, go for it, which again can be a strength in some respects, because I can just let go of that what I kind of visualized it was going to look like, and know to go with the process and it will look how it's going to look. So I suppose the other way that the ADHD really impacts van life can be the sensory things. So being around nature is really, really relaxing and really calming. Every time we come to these festivals, we're a trio of ADHD. So a combined ADHD, autism, dyspraxia. So we're like tripping over things, falling over things. We've lost everything on the first night. So it can be quite dramatic when we're all together. But being out in nature is also so calming. So that has definitely improved my life, and simplifying my life, believe it or not, has actually been the best thing that I could have done. So obviously living in a bus, you've got to fill water tanks, you've got to empty your toilet, you kind of have to plan ahead, and all these things did not come naturally to me, and certainly wouldn't have in my 20s. So it's definitely timing wise that as I've got older, I've developed those skills that I've needed to then support what I'm doing. So I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but does anybody feel comfortable asking any questions? Is there anything in particular that people want to know about the bus build or ADHD on my life or schooling? Steph can come around and ask you, and then relay those questions if you feel more confident doing it that way. And I can hang around a little bit so you can come over and talk.
Have you noticed a massive uptick of girls being diagnosed in the last few years?
Oh yeah, absolutely, definitely. But to be honest, I've noticed a massive uptake in girls being interested in getting the diagnosis, but then still finding that their doctors are talking to them in this way as though they still know better. I think, in my opinion, that this is there's no scientific backing, but I think the medical industry's still got to catch up a lot with women's health in general, but especially how it looks in females. So my little sister, she's homeschooled and she's very, very anxious, but in her own surroundings she absolutely thrives. You know, she loves horses and things like that. But when my stepmom took her to see the psychologist, they just said, oh, but she gives lovely eye contact. It was like, you know, that was the end. It doesn't matter that she comes out in hives and is physically sick when she's put in scenarios that she doesn't enjoy and things like that. So please don't rely on validation through a diagnosis, I suppose I would say there. That there's a lot to be said for doing your own research, putting your own support techniques in place. When I was in quite a toxic relationship at one point, and I was chasing the diagnosis almost just to prove to him I am ADHD, and then eventually I thought, I haven't got to prove to anybody anything. You know, I know how my brain works and I know what supports me, and if people can't meet me halfway when I'm prepared to kind of be tolerant and supportive of their needs, then, you know, the boyfriend has to go. And now and now I'm living this fabulous life in a bus, so there's no regrets there. But also with the female diagnosis thing as well, one of my other friends, I mean, if she was here, she'd be running loops. You know what I'm talking about. She'd be running loops while like squealing. She's really hyperactive, and all four of her kids are neurodivergent. Like, they've all got two have got quite severe autism, and they've all got diagnoses. And when she said to her doctor, I think I might be ADHD, he went, you're not ADHD, I'm ADHD. It was like, oh, okay. Oh, like, you know, and that just absolutely blew my mind, because I thought, he's probably sat with her for 5 or 10 minutes and he's got the confidence to say, you're not ADHD, when she quite clearly is. She's the poster girl for ADHD. So, but for her, it knocked her, you know. She was like, oh, you know, maybe I'm just a problem then. So bear it in mind that there is this huge issue in terms of understanding how it looks. And then you've got the stigma of, oh, well, it didn't exist in my day. I can assure you it did. The thing is, society probably wasn't like back in the day, as it were. So my granddad, he's, I think he's about 87, and he is so typically dyslexic and autistic. And I know that through working in the school and being around that experience. But he was made to wear a dunce hat at school, and that lack of self-esteem has stayed with him his whole life. And that's like kind of what gives me the passion I want people to believe in themselves. So it's like seeing the treatment that my granddad's been put through has fed into that. But the thing is, my granddad never had any jabs, so, you know, all this, it's MMR that gives you autism, things like that. And again, I don't know the science. There probably might be certain links somewhere between certain things, but my granddad's always had an allotment. He was around in the days before processed foods. So for me, I'm like, I know that it's a genetic thing and that it has always been around. But with my granddad, he just walked into factories and was like, got any jobs going? And he was given a job, and he worked solidly and loyally for the same company his whole life without having nobody ever knew he couldn't read or write very well. But the young people I work with today, they're 15 and they are gagging for work, and they cannot even find a job till they're 18. But by then, they've probably already been criminalised and they're on the path to criminality because they want to earn money. They don't get along academically. And so they find any avenue they can to earn that money. So there is a huge issue. But yeah, don't get caught up in that kind of argument of ADHD doesn't exist. Sometimes I half expected, I thought, what if somebody heckles me today and says, oh, I don't believe in it? And I thought, well, I'll be like, well, I still exist. So you might not believe ADHD exists, but I've still got, regardless of an opinion, I've still got kind of emotional dysregulation. And so emotional dysregulation, while I've just mentioned it as well, is that thing of so you might have extreme reactions to things that people think are only minor, and you've had this huge reaction to it. And then the opposite as well, something that you might expect to have a complete breakdown over takes you a little while to process, or your emotions just don't seem to match up. For my mum, when she was reading about all these things, she was like, oh my God, it all makes so much sense. And then there's rejection sensitivity as well. So things like if your friends have planned to go for a dog walk and you have not been invited, you don't know how that kind of situation came about. It could have been a completely organic situation. They just happened to go for this dog walk, but then you find out and it's like heartbreakingly bad. It's like, oh my God, nobody likes me. Everybody must hate me. So it's being aware of, it's just being aware of how these things create your picture. And that's essentially what we were trying to create with the platform, is this place that you can come along, you can do some self-discovery, you can talk to two people that have got lived and work experience. Steph's a therapist. So we've both got that professional experience as well as personal experience, and hopefully feel less like a black sheep and more like there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and you can find ways to support yourself. So we had the question about the female diagnosis. Is there anything else that you want to ask?
No.
Is there anybody else that wants to ask anything? Go on.
From a teacher's perspective,
Yeah.
do you think the school system is letting down children that are on the spectrum?
Oh yes. So for those that didn't hear the question, it was from a teacher's perspective. Do I think the school system is letting people down that are on the spectrum? Well, yeah, but I also think that the system's working exactly how they want it to work. The system is very much, through my experience, about raising little conformists that will then go on to do a job without questioning too much and, be happy in this cycle of a 9 to 5. And those that don't succeed in that system just kind of get sent to, well, I work in an alternative provision, so that's where those students get sent to. And even in those alternative provisions, I've got the job that I'm meant to do by the government's law, which is to get them through these specific qualifications. But then I feel like I've got a duty to teach them things that are actually going to be helpful around their mental health and how to apply for a job and what kind of jobs might suit them. So it's like we're doing double the work because we're trying to tick the boxes, but also actually support young people. My dream is to see the whole system actually change, and I feel like what we need is parents to just refuse to send their kids to school, just go on strike. Teachers go on strike when they don't feel that their needs are being met. So it would be great if villages could come together and say, right, bring all your kids to the village hall this day so you can all go to work, I'll look after the kids, and just don't send them to school and just refuse until things change. Because when you start to look at how the school system's set up, it's like, you raise your hand and you ask to go to the toilet and then you're told no. That just baffles me. I know you've got to manage the fact that there's 1,000 kids on site and they can't all be going to the toilet at the same time, but there's definitely an element of control there where it's kind of teaching you to ask and be told no and to just sit and to hold it. At work, you don't have to ask your boss to go to the toilet. And also the whole having to wear a blazer even in the boiling heat. there's never seems to be any kind of, it's like, well, this is the rule and we've got to stick to it. But the point is, we are all different. So I definitely think that we could support the spectrum better. The other thing as well is this focus on English and maths. If you ask an English teacher to do maths, they'll go, oh, I can't do maths. And the same the other way round. And yeah, we expect young people to be able to achieve a qualification in both that I guarantee us, like, if we got the papers out now, we'd be baffled by. So it's almost like filling their heads with other stuff so that they're so busy and distracted they can't possibly question the running of the world. You know, it's like you're too busy trying to work out how to apply fractions to your shopping list. And this is the thing, I think young people, if you can give them context, some of mine will say, oh, why do I need to learn this? And I'll say, well, because of this. And they're like, oh, okay. And, you know, I think it's a really good thing to ask questions. When I was younger, I used to get in a lot of trouble for questioning my teachers why. And I did not mean it disrespectful. I wasn't trying to be difficult. I genuinely just wanted to know why. And my mum would get called in like, she's been asking why again. Like, oh, how dare, you know, a young person want to understand why? And again, I always think that that's an indicator. If as a teacher a young person asks you why and you feel triggered by that, then something's very wrong, because they've got a good point. Maybe the reason that you feel triggered is because there isn't a point to learning this other than you've got an exam that you need to get through, and I'm going to be judged on whether you get through that exam. It's like, let's all just be honest and say that that's what it is. Sometimes I've said that to my young people. They're like, why have I got to learn this? I'm like, because the exam's going to ask you, and you need the exam to get into college. And you need the college to open the door to the next thing. You know, it's very much, if they trip at some of those hurdles, then they just fall further and further behind. The statistics for people with autism that's out of work is really, really high. It's ridiculous. And it's like, I mean, I support a young lad twice a week. He's 22 and he is absolutely dying for a job, and we cannot find him a job anywhere because he can't just work a 9 to 5 on a rate. He needs like just a slight alteration, and it's like the companies aren't prepared to do that. Sorry, you had a question as well. Do you remember what it was? Have you forgotten it?
No, I got it now. With friends of mine, one of the tough things is the emotional just regulation.
Yeah.
The rejection. You said that you don't medicate yourself. Do you have techniques for, you know, when you become upset like that, to steer yourself back?
Yeah. So in terms of supporting yourself with emotional dysregulation and rejection sensitivity, it very much for me was down to the more I read about it and the more I understood about it, the better I could cope with it. And I think we turn to anger as an easy reaction. And so it's like the first part of educating somebody is understanding that your anger is usually hiding an emotion that's harder to deal with. So if we can educate people to recognise that, okay, you're triggered right now, take your time to come down off that trigger. You know, we don't need to kind of start the therapy right now while you're in this high state, but take the time to come down off it. And then once you're calmer, work out, okay, well, what triggered you? Why did that trigger you? What can you do in future? Sometimes it is just knowing that, oh, okay, here we go with that big reaction. But also, if you're in a friendship group, like my other sister, she's 18 at the minute, and she's struggling with her anger a little bit, and I remember doing that at her age as well. So hormones will come into it, knowing your own cycle. You know, I think that everybody's on their own natural cycle of like highs and lows, so it's like recognising those feelings and thinking, oh, I'm just a little bit touchy today, so I might take that a bit personally. Is there anything specific that you could think of that I could give advice for? Like, is there a specific scenario or?
Well, I think just kind of that. When you become angry.
Yeah. What do you do?
Yeah, because often I've seen it happen where it's just,
yeah.
Oh yeah, it just seems like you're overreacting. You know.
Yeah.
It's not that big a deal. But I think that's very insightful. That anger is looking for what is the root emotion, instead of just saying. But do you have any techniques that, you know, if you're going through your day and you become
get angry
or you become emotional about something, that you're like, well, steer yourself back to
well, again, it's going to be personal to you, but finding those things that can hack your brain and calm you down is absolutely brilliant. So music is a really good one. I always think with ADHDers, say, because I have to transport kids sometimes in my car, and I'll put music on, and it doesn't matter how young they are, they're like, oh yeah, and you just think music is one of those things. It's so bizarre how it just it just gets them. So I think music is really, really good for changing your mood and kind of getting you out of that slump. But breath work, I don't know whether anybody's tried breath work, but last year or the year before I started to do some breath work sessions, and they give you techniques that you can do in the moment using your oxygen and your breath to change your nervous system. But I think just doing that every few weeks, having those breathwork workshops, allowed me to start unpacking kind of trauma and emotions that I didn't know existed. And then in the future, I didn't seem to get so angry. Road rage was a real issue for me, and I'd hate myself for it because I like to think I'm a nice person. I like to try and treat people in a nice way. But then get me behind the wheel, I'm there like, bah, going mad. And then I think, this isn't me. What am I doing? So, doing the breath work and working on other areas, I then noticed that when I was in the car, I did actually seem calmer. And self-talk, being kinder to yourself instead of kind of saying, oh, you stupid idiot, you're always doing that. It's like trying to adapt a kinder voice for yourself so that you're not kind of keeping yourself in that stressed place. Your brain doesn't actually know the difference between you abusing yourself and somebody else calling you horrible names. So if you're calling yourself an idiot and stupid, it will feel as stressed and react the same way as if a stranger has just come up and started calling you those things. So I think being aware of that inner voice was definitely my turning point. Anybody else want to know about anything specifically? It can be about the bus conversion or ADHD, I don't mind. A lot of people want to know, like, well, where'd you go for a poo? Things like that. Yeah, go on. Well, the books have behaved so well so far. So I'm hoping that what I do is I'll wedge them really tightly before I go. So I make sure that all the shelves are completely full. And, that might mean moving some books so that the shelves that are full are wedged full, and then the others do have to go into boxes. But for the future, I will put bungee cables across if they do. I think it helps that the shelves are quite wide, so they sit quite far back, because when I get to my destination, sometimes they've jumped right the way to the front, but they have actually stayed on. So that's a bonus. Go on.
Do you have a permanent residency, as in like a land, piece of land you go to, or do you just travel around?
So I started off on a permanent spot, and that was where I worked, so I was really lucky that they allowed me to park there. So I moved into the bus full time in January in that spot, and that allowed me to get used to living in a bus whilst not moving. I've only just started travelling around. From here I go back to a place and I'm there for a week, and then after that I don't actually know where I'm going to go. So again, it comes down to that, having a little bit of faith and kind of living in the moment and just thinking, well, I'll worry about that next stage when I come to it. But I am lucky that I've got 2 weeks and then the summer holidays start. So what I think I'll do is I'll book into a campsite for 2 weeks just to get me to the summer holidays, because I just need my car to commute back and forth and things like that. And then through the 6 week summer holiday, I think I'm going to try being quite nomadic and just get used to finding truck stops and places that I can park. I think it's about just not taking advantage and moving on after a night or two and things like that. It's definitely helpful because it's got the business aspect as well. It's not just me living in a bus. I've got that kind of, can I come and stay on the car park and I'll offer free books to the residents for 2 days. So I'm hoping that I can kind of create a bit of a circuit so I can return to places and come back. So in terms of doing, like, I mean, you guys have all probably got vans and things, so it's like you're not complete newbies to the whole thing. But I think because there's so many details to consider, if I'd tried to figure it all out before I'd started, I never would have done it. I'd have just been like, oh, that's never going to work out. So my area's there's quite a lot of farmers, so I'm hoping that, I think I'm going to be on the East Midlands News as well this week. So I'm hoping that exposure is there's going to be somebody skinny enough to say, here you go, you can park up. But land is the next plan. That's the next thing on the vision board. So hopefully I'll be here next year and I'll be like, yes, I've got a piece of land. You can all come and stay on it if you like. I would like to do a camp, like a little campsite, get a piece of land and me come and go off of it, but also have 6 pictures or something and have people come and go. That is the next plan. So if anyone's got any land for sale, then hit me up. Go on. My memory, shocking. Yeah, absolutely shocking. I wish I was one of the, some people drive places and they're like, oh yeah, that was the M62 and then the A50. I'm not like that, and that's not come in handy at all when it comes to driving the bus, because I could have done with that memory of knowing roads and things. But in general, life is quite surprising because I don't really retain anything. You know, I can watch a film and then have no idea that I've watched it, read a book and have no idea that I've read it. I'd be quite happy just going through those shelves, just reading everything and rereading till the end of time. I live by making lists. I used to get really stressed because I'd know I had things to remember and I'd know I'd forgotten things. And about 10 years ago, I started keeping a diary, not as in a Dear Diary thing, as in putting in appointments and being really strict with myself. I was so lucky that I worked under 2 teachers, one that was very much like me and she just winged it, and the other one was so organised, but I learned a lot from him, and his organisation I kind of really tried to apply to my life, and the diary thing is something that stuck. So what I'll do is say, like, I've got a hen do in August and I've got to organise something for that, so I've made a note in my diary about mid-July. It's like hen do ... and I'm always kind of putting those little clues for myself. I'm like, oh, hello future Lindsay or past Lindsay, like, thank you for leaving this little letter for myself. So notes, writing on my hands, yeah, things like that. It's quite tricky, but what you'll find that there's this memory, there's never, with the spectrum, ADHD and autism, there's never this kind of in between. You're always like one extreme or the other. Like, I'm sure my friend over here won't mind me saying, she's got a thing for registration plates and people's outfits. So I'm always like, Lou, what did I wear to that last girl gathering? So I don't want to wear the same thing. She's like, you wore a pink dress with a, you know, she knows. So there's like these extremities. You'd have made a great detective, mate. That's you missed your call in there. Is your memory quite tricky up and down? Yeah, and it can make you feel really daft, can't it? Like you've not listened or not cared, and it's like, it's not that, I've just it's not remembered. Even this morning I'd made some notes about my talk that are over there somewhere, and I was like, where did I put the notes? I remember putting them somewhere and thinking, remember where you've put them. I remember that part, I just don't remember where I've put them. So, but this is what I mean about the kind inner talk. If you can just laugh at yourself and say, oh, silly me, you know, like try and be a bit kinder instead of being like, you're an idiot, then you will actually keep your stress levels down, and then everything else kind of feels a little bit better as well. No worries. Anybody else want to know anything specific? I mean, like I say, I'm not going to rush off. I've got my coffee to drink, and I've got these stickers with the QR codes that go straight to our website, which is a differenthumandesign.co.uk. On there, there's blogs, there's links to our YouTube channel with the videos, there's our shop with all of our resources in there. There's also a signposting page, because what we've found is there's so many cool little initiatives doing stuff, so every time we find them, we list them on the signposting page, because we just think it is all about options and having somewhere to turn. And we are just putting together a collection of stories called A Different Story. So we've approached people that have overcome barriers and things like that, and they've told their story, and we're going to highlight those, because I just feel like the more you can meet other people and hear their experiences, the less harsh you are on yourself, the more accepting you can be of yourself. So thank you very much for listening. I hope I've not bored anybody too much. I'm sure the ADHDers amongst the crowd will forget every word I've said in a couple of minutes. So but yeah, I'll come around with some of these stickers, and then if anybody's got any questions they want to ask me, feel free. Thank you very much.